I don't want to take too much time. We have Molly, who is a brilliant poet. I think I should have shared a screenshot the first time that I read Molly's poems that came to my email. What my response was, "What the fuck, Molly? Are you fucking kidding me? I have never read anything like that." And I just sent that one line, and I was like, "Fuck, what did I do?" Maybe Molly's now scared, she's like, "Oh God, who have I come across
It
this
was like
honest?"
it was like a Thursday night at 11:23 p.m. and I think I had just finished doing whatever and like about to go to bed and I just got this like what the in my email. But no, I loved, yeah, I've always loved your enthusiasm. So that's something I should say thank you to you for, Karen.
Thank you, Molly. Uh, so yeah, let's just hear Molly's poetry, who has won awards and has published all over the place, and let's just start with it. Molly, do you want to do the honor of reading for us?
For sure. So I guess first of all, I just wanted to kind of um, thank you, Karen and Shannon, for this amazing literary platform that you guys have grown from a seed. It's so cool to follow your guys' journal and see how much it just continues to grow and attract such cool readers and writers. I feel really lucky to have been put in touch with you and with everyone on the Zoom. And I'm really appreciative that you guys, want to log on. I know it's like a Wednesday night and the summer is such a fun time. But, I think poems are just as fun, if not more. So it's cool that we all kind of think that. Um, and before I get too long-winded, sorry, Karen. So how many poems am I reading? Or is it, I don't think I asked about the rules. It's
Just go ahead and read for like 20 minutes.
okay. Okay, well, you'll have to just let me know how timing goes. I think I'll probably read just the list of poems that we've published, right? With only poems. So, um, okay. I think let's get into it, and maybe I'll give some commentary here and there as it kind of arises. These are poems that I've wrote over a year ago now, so this is also really fun for me because it feels kind of like a time capsule. So, okay, the first, so wow, there's so much intro here. So I wrote a series of poems that I like to call like my alter ego poems, and these are poems that um, I think that they are fantastical and absurdist vignettes of certain personalities of mine. I don't know how autobiographical they are. That's maybe up to question. So this is the first poem I ever wrote, and it's called The Girl with No Hands. The girl with no hands actually does have hands. It's just they are invisible and she only makes use of them to serve herself. No, really, she can sew and play the piano, just not for you. Sometimes her lovers will ask to have their ego stroked, but the girl with no hands will not and cannot indulge in such behavior. Other times, interested suitors will approach her at a bar downtown and ask for her number, but the girl has no hands, and so she waves them away with a toss of her nubby arm. Does she ever wish she could feel? Of course. But sometimes it's just easier to be felt. Once in a meeting, a male partner tried to ask her to take notes, and she just glared at him until he understood. The girl with no hands is unable to flip the bird, so last week when she was catcalled on the street, she instead told the man to fuck off. And this left the entire block silent and stunned. She was smirking, though. Overnight, a whole class of paraphernalia becomes irrelevant. Gloves, nail polish, secret handshakes, sweaty hand jobs. She was the only girl in our fourth grade class who could wear short shorts to school because technically her wrists grazed the end of her ass. Her favorite sport is American soccer, and her favorite film is Cool Hand Luke. I saw her play classical piano out in Washington Square Park, but the last time this happened, the New Yorkers couldn't understand how she was making sound since her hands can't be perceived. So she doesn't do that anymore. Though sometimes she will sigh when she remembers the solitary joys of combing a loved one's hair while they watch in quiet shock. An invisible rake runs through their locks, and all the while, a handless musician gently plays the world's most tender harp using just her wrists. So that was the first one. Don't know what you guys thought of that. I like this. Thanks, guys. But yeah, that is a poem I think about perception and being perceived. And that's all I'll say on that. Yes, thank you, Lenny. Yeah, it was the first poem I wrote in this theme, not ever. My first poem I wrote ever was I would never let anyone hear those, I think. The next poem that I'll read is yeah, again, within the same theme, and this one is called The Girl Who Loves to Clean. The girl had a messy childhood. It was littered with loud noises and tons of shouting. Sometimes these were happy sounds, the scream of excitement tumbling down the staircase, or the jubilation waltzing through the front door. Other times, these would be displays of anger, hurled insults and words that crossed the Rubicon and never looked back. It was in these moments when the girl would begin to clean. First, she'd wipe down all surfaces until she scrubbed away the last of the emotional debris. Then her handheld vacuum would zap away despair with a sharp inhale. Anything could disappear at any second. Dust bunnies, scraps of paper, the tornado that at times seized her with full force. She never felt like she had a handle on anything, and for most of her young life, she was just a piece of sea kelp flailing inside a gale storm. She swore that as a grown-up, things would be different. And they are. And they're not. These days, she has an Amazon subscription for weekly deliveries of Lysol wipes and bleach. For her birthday, she asked for a $400 mop, and she balks at the idea of hiring a house cleaner or splurging on a Roomba. What are they going to do that I can't do better? And she's not wrong, I suppose. I've seen the way she can eviscerate a red wine stain from a pair of white jeans, the way her eyes dart around the carpet, scanning for domestic tumbleweeds. She wants nothing more than to spend her Friday evenings on her hands and knees, buffing the oak floors of her apartment. For this reason, her living space is cleaner than a sterilized echo chamber that's never seen the light of day. It's also why she doesn't really have guests over. And come to think of it, she doesn't really have friends. It's kind of impossible to be anything more than pen pals with her. On a Zoom call, I mentioned that she didn't have to pick up every single follicle of hair, sweep up each speck of dust within her reach, but she was too busy lint rolling the computer screen. Once she told me her wet dream was for a man to roll up his sleeves and actually hand wash the dirty dishes. That would be so hot, she admitted with a wistful smile. And then she was silent. We both knew she was thinking about how it would still be necessary for her to do a second wash after the fact. Thanks, guys. That was So yeah, that was my second alter ego poem. Um, moving on to the third, I guess. This one is called The Girl Who Can't Stop Daydreaming. The girl who can't stop daydreaming has already been hit by half a dozen cars and bicycles, and for this reason, she is a pedestrian menace, especially in a city like New York. But don't worry, miraculously, the girl has always recovered from these run-ins. Last week, she daydreamed about sushi in the shape of dogs. This week, she's daydreaming about her latest crush, some long-haired earth specimen with locks as curly as a packet of ramen noodles. Given her multiple casualties, it's truly a shock that she's never actually bumped into anyone she knows on the street. Her gaze can only be compared to a sleepwalking butterfly. Her chin is tilted up. She's not looking at you, she's staring at the sky and watching the lunchers who sit at the rooftop restaurant like a pack of city pigeons. She's thinking about how being inside the edifice feels like wading through the belly of a whale, how it already feels as though summer is slipping through her fingers, though it's only May. She daydreams about possibilities and make-believe scenarios, sometimes involving you, but always involving her. And while she dreams about the day in turn dreams about her. You can tell by the way she makes a wish on a dandelion and the seeds dance around her hair like a mortal halo. Her dream journal is more detailed and up to date than her checkbook, and her ideal vacation destination is Saturn. She probably couldn't recount for you any names from the street signs downtown, but she could be the sole author of the North American Cloud Almanac. A disco ball can mesmerize her for hours, an optical illusion for centuries. Behind her back, they call her an airhead. They say she's a space cadet, and maybe they're right. The left hemisphere of her brain replays her favorite dreams on a loop, while the right side feels like swimming inside a lava lamp. Once she was daydreaming about what it'd be like to fly without paying attention, of course, and walked straight into a manhole. I haven't been able to reach her ever since. So I was just thinking, and I want to say this, thank you guys so much. It's really funny and interesting. Oh, I see my brother on here. Um, really funny and interesting to give a Zoom reading, and the energy like flows in a different way. So every time you guys are sending like a little chat message, I guess I'm getting distracted, but like happily so. It's like really sweet. And I love seeing you guys. So I just appreciate it. Okay, second thing I wanted to say is as I was reading this poem, and I was mentioning this to Chen and Karen before we started, is especially with the last poem, one thing I really love about poetry is just the silliness that poems can be and the creative flexibility to just be, I think Chen said unhinged, he used the word unhinged, and I think just the ability to just kind of like throw it all out there, right? And be free is kind of what I was thinking. That's one of my favorite things and one of the main inspirations behind writing these pieces. Sorry. And the point of me bringing this up is that I feel like a lot of times as adults, it's really, I felt this way at least, like I felt a little scared to be silly sometimes. Because, we live in this world and people are more, maybe sometimes more interested, I'm speaking for myself, of being perceived as being capable or smart or eloquent or good at things, and I think it's really underratedly important to be silly, if not for others, then for yourself. That's my silly speech. I will be moving on. How much more time do I have, Karen?
Maybe two more poems.
Two. Okay, then I'd like to choose the right ones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, so maybe I'll read one more alter ego poem, and then I think it'd be really nice to read a non-alter ego poem. which I'll probably read. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I really want you to read that one.
I'm gonna read, I think I'll read like 99 Cent Dreams, which will be cool. But the last alter ego poem that I would like to read for you guys is called The Girl Who Had Two Sets of Teeth. Okay. Yeah, let's do this one. Oh no, I'm having second thoughts. Sorry, I'm gonna read The Girl Who Turned Into a Fish. I really like that one. So that will be the next poem. Okay. This poem is called The Girl Who Turned Into a Fish. The girl who turned into a fish has always loved water, seldom felt free. She would have lasted longer in a world with fewer responsibilities, more room to change. Sometimes when she dreams of throwing it all away, she'll walk along the river and stare over the edge of the railing into the curious world below. She's drawn to its surface, which slinks riotously in and out like hills and hills of electric eels. There, buoys dance like sunken graves. In the water, a bag of Cheetos becomes a billowing goldfish. From the shore, she watches a wave slowly curl into a thunderclap. The girl has a lot on her mind. A list of unread emails entreating her to complete task after task. Requests from her boss, who still asks her to fax his documents for him. She is the eldest daughter and the keeper of dozens of terrible secrets. Her phone is just a waiting room filled with people seeking comfort. And she listens, of course, as she always does, because if she didn't, the world would fall apart. At least sometimes that's how it feels. Did I mention the girl is tired as hell of saying yes, of holding her tongue, of smiling sweetly? Under the surface, a pot of water softly boils on a stovetop. Last week, we took a walk on the West Side Highway when she pointed out to me two ships along the horizon. From the wrong angle, doesn't it seem like they'll collide nose first instead of quietly passing? I nodded and didn't think much more of it. Soon after, she started to wear long sea green dresses. She began each morning sipping seaweed broth and gargling with salt water. Then one day I read in the paper she'd gone missing, and I was worried, but not for too long. The next time I wandered along the water, a roiling sensation overtook my thoughts, like a geyser or the breathing of a whale. At the verge of the river, a pile of her glittering turquoise clothes spun in a frenzied heap. Suddenly, I heard an uncontrollable splash. I even thought I heard her musical laugh before I saw her swim far away, vanishing with the ocean suds into the throat of the horizon. So that is that poem is called The Girl Who Turned Into a Fish. And one time I was sending my friend some of these poems, and she said, I noticed that in these poems, like the character, the alter ego, she always disappears, like she always vanishes. And I thought that was really interesting that I didn't notice that. Thank you guys. Just reading your really kind messages. Okay, so the last poem I'll read for you guys is called 99 Cent Dreams. And this is a poem that I was just inspired by from going into a dollar store last fall. And it just reminded me of how much I love the dollar store as a kid. I used to go there. So, okay, this is my memory as a kid is like, we would go to the pool and we would like swim for hours and we'd be so hungry. And then we'd go to McDonald's and like buy a cheeseburger. And then and in that shopping mall, there was a dollar store as well. And that dollar store was like so crazy to me because, I was like 10, I had no money, I had like quarters, but it was the only place where I could like take quarter or money and like buy things. Like I could like go and get things for myself. I didn't have to like run it past my parents. And I thought that was so cool. So anyway, this poem is called 99-Cent Dreams. 99-cent dreams, I wanted to buy you. I wanted to buy America, really, and hold everything plastic and star-spangled in my starfish hands. Rows of dehydrated nail polish, garish and dried like a mud flat, like a side effect. The color of the soul of a clown, color of my escape route to mainstream happiness. What's funny is it's all junk, but only once you cross the threshold of the glaucoma gates. It's the only gold you know when nose deep in a pile of blonde Barbies, their sun-stained boxes, exoskeleton of a metallic balloon family, papered poinsettias in mid-February, foam pool noodles like discarded bucatini. The most painful tragedy on my radar, a Valentine, crushed up blue Jolly Rancher, those zip-off shorts. My grandmother liked to say, the best dreams are made from water. In a landlocked town, she put sliced watermelon in a plastic bag. She put toasted almonds in a plastic bag. She put jewels in a flimsy case and flew across 2 oceans, actually 3, actually dreaming runs in the family. But what did I know of other lifetimes that could possibly hold me? Could only understand graveyard, treasure trove, half eroded dollar bills so soft like tissue paper. Small town millionaire, I wanted to buy and buy everything and then forget about my riches by the time I woke up on Monday morning. Thank you guys. It means so much to me that you guys are on the Zoom. I'm so appreciative. I want to just take 1 second again to thank Karen for organizing this, and Shannon and Chen, who we're about to hear. And I'm so excited. I'm almost speechless. Last thing I want to say really quickly is I'd like to plug my journal called Passengers Journal, which is a fantastic literary journal that I serve as the poetry editor for. I want to invite all of you. First of all, we should connect in the name of poetry. And if anyone wants to send along submissions, I would be so grateful and interested, and we should talk. So if that's something you're interested in, I think my email I'll put my email in the chat and we can maybe go from there. But okay, I'm gonna just hand it back off. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you so much. Well, now you all know what I was talking about. Um, that's the touch of Molly's brilliance. Thank you, Molly, again. The poems are still just as brilliant as I first found them. Thank you for reading for us. Yeah, so just for the sake of time, we'd invite Chen Chen to read for us, who I have admired for a really long time, quietly, and now for the last little while, loudly. These 2 books that I keep very close, like as a display thing on my shelves, are Chen Chen's, who I like the books I highly recommend. I have so much to say that I wouldn't have time to say that, so I would shut up and I would invite Chen Chen to just let the poet let his poems speak for themselves. Thank you so much again, Chen, for doing this. We know how busy your schedule is and how sought after you are as a poet, and you're becoming a household name now. So thank you again for coming and doing this for us. Thank you so much, and yeah, kill us with your poems.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you, Karen and Shannon and everyone at Only Poems. And Molly, those poems, such a glorious world that I want to keep swimming in. So thank you for sharing those. Yeah, I kept like playing with my hair. Because I got a haircut recently, and my hairdresser was like, because I had like these bangs for a while, and I'm still kind of like wrestling with whether I want bangs. Just thinking about that. I just had this flashback to my hairdresser saying, "Oh, you should show more of your forehead. It's more handsome that way." And ever since she said that, I've been wanting to write a poem called More Forehead, More Handsome. Um, so sort of in the cadence of what is it, Too Fast, Too Furious? More forehead, more handsome. I wanted to start with a poem, a short poem by Mary Oliver, because also I've been on Tumblr again. I had the Tumblr for a while, and then I stopped because I was like, I don't know what's happening with this platform anymore. But I've since like yeah, recently been like back on there, mostly lurking. But came across this really beautiful short poem by Mary Oliver. I don't want to live a small life. I don't want to live a small life. Open your eyes, open your hands. I have just come from the berry fields, the sun kissing me with its golden mouth all the way. Open your hands. And the wind-winged clouds following along, thinking perhaps I might feed them. But no, I carry these heart shapes only to you. Look how many, how small, but so sweet. And maybe the last gift I will ever bring to anyone in this world of hope and risk. So do. Look at me. Open your life. Open your hands. So I wanted to start with a very wintry poem after that. This is in Only Poems. Recipe found in a winter boot. Hurdle the cake, hurdle the grave. Tell the smallest dog your smelliest you. Erase the hand erasing the mouth. Move to a distant memory with your worst marginalia or favorite cousin. Journal about it. Type up your review of the year's first snow, a predictably thrilling sequel to what the leaves not too long ago said. Then kiss the snow. Pick up a heaping handful and smooch it. Feel the snow give you smoochies back. Listen to it. Listen close. The snow. Each fluttering little note of it saying, kiss me and kiss me, here and here. Okay, this next one's called Post-Solstice Moodism. It's accurate to the time of year. It's after the solstice. Post-Solstice Moodism, and it's all in questions. And I think I'm going to read another new poem that's all in questions. Post-Solstice Moodism. When did they show up, the not-so-little hairs on my knee? Do you too have a news anchor voice going in your head whenever you read the back of the cereal box? Isn't it literature, the Gatorade she left in the other room the other day? Hasn't he sensed the needs of a tree, his favorite oak, at least? Aren't we in the traveling part of summer? How did I stop listening to my need to be high up in a tree, in any height of tree, in it, at least? How are you? Staying out of trouble, keeping a bee? Don't you tell me a claw sandwich doesn't sound better than a finger sandwich. You wouldn't dare, would you? If we were to slither now, hither would we go? Okay, I'll go right into the next one. This is based on emails that I have received, corresponding with the heterosexuals. Hi, enthused teacher or bewildered student or concerned parent. Thank you for emailing me out of the blue, or as the French say, out of the bleu. To answer your urgent and original question, I am not inspired ever. I write just so you will assign slash do slash help with, while disapproving of, all this homework about me and grow up, or finally be well adjusted, capable of taking out the recycling on a semi-regular basis while talking to your semi-handsome neighbor who's sitting outside. Ah, the fresh air becoming hotter and oranger by the minute. Oh, that's not a gay thing, sorry, that's a planet and deep doo-doo thing. To answer your less urgent and unoriginal question, yes, Your dreams will die and so will you. But if you're lucky, you'll go first. Meanwhile, someone in Switzerland is sending their very first email. Now, isn't that a sight for sore eyes? Oh, a cliche. Quick, let's revise. Now, isn't that a kite for sore lives? Much better, n'est-ce pas? Sorry, I know French is filth and the gayest of long. And now I must go feed my second pug symposium. Yep, that's a Plato thing. Oui, that's a gay thing. So sorry. Désolé. Je suis vraiment, vachement désolé. I knew I would find some use for 6 years of French. Studied it for so long. And now I just use it here and there. Yeah, I I just did a reading mainly from my second book, but I don't think I want to read from it, so I'm going to. I'm just gonna read all stuff that's not in a book yet. This one has a long title. Of course, it's on FaceTime that Sam calls me a monster to my face repeatedly, then asks, has anyone ever called you a monster? All because I said 3:30 p.m. is a bonkers time to FaceTime, and 4 p.m. is much more reasonable. And why shouldn't I talk about my elegant perm a bit every day for the rest of our lives? And it's July, and I've been utterly behind since last July, and I'm definitely still writing the wrong year, sometimes month, but I always ask if the day of the week is right. The who the hell cares? I do. God, do I care? I mean, I don't give a shit if I'm deeply understood or genuinely likable, but I need to be lovable. I write to be lovable. I write, I rewrite, I say, read my poems to be loved, and not my poems, me, love me, not my words, love this person with this face and this name and this chin and this need and this upside down wishful wistfulness and this memory and that pet fish and these Tuesdays and these moods and these tootsies and these shirts and those little embroidered flowers and these bits of hair on my shirt shoulders and my mother cutting my hair and my mother who cut my hair till I was 15 and full of rage, and both of us were, and different reasons, and similar rage, and she was so lonely, and I was so lonely, and so those haircuts grew into memory, and the snips and strands on the concrete, what was it? A sitting area outside our apartment, and it was late summer, late afternoon, and later she would cut the watermelon too, and all the juice on the counter, and all the hurt she said, and did, and could have, and didn't, and wept, and did. She did say sorry. She is doing sorry. Can I be done hurting? Do you know how, in one dream, my hair was so long, only she could cut it. She said, let me, and I let her. This next poem's also all in questions, but maybe a bit less absurd than the previous one that was all in questions. These are like, it's based on questions that I have or would ask my friends. So it's called Questionnaire for Queers, in parentheses, in their 30s. Questionnaire for Queers in their 30s. Do you believe in an afterlife? What do you think about marriage? How long was your longest trip by bike? With which of your exes would you raise a child? Did you remember your sunscreen? Is there a societal norm you not so secretly believe will keep you safe? Have you been cheated on? Have you cheated? Where did that gorgeous pair of Doc Martens go? What is your relationship to gossip? Do you like how the British say oregano? If you're British, skip this one. Have your parents gone to therapy? Would you rather date a surfer or a skateboarder? Why did you leave the orgy so early? Was it the lack of structure? When is a good time to quit your job? How does the second verse of that awful song go? With which of your exes could you buy a house? Are you okay? Will you be okay? Will you be all right? Will you be? Why are there only 2 Asians on this queer beach in Portland, Oregon? If you are a queer white Portlander, don't skip this one. Where does the soul go with its little blue suitcase? Who do you believe in? What is the summer for? Um, the British say it oregano, if you didn't know. I find that so weird. Oregano. Like just imagine like say that in a sentence. I don't know. Um, okay, this one's very new. It's not published anywhere. It's called The Year. And I'll read just one more after this one. The Year. In January, I wonder if Father Time ever likes being called Daddy. In February, I injure my left foot. In March, I chortle. On March 31st, I realize there are 31 days in March. In April, I eat healthy while watching too much TV. In May, I make a decision about snail figurines. More, please. In June, I flail but do not fail completely. Later in June, I wonder what it feels like to be the second A in Aaron. During the summer solstice, I lie face down, butt naked in bed with a standing fan pointed at my behind. In July, I chortle, I even cackle, in one park, then another. I laugh, as though I don't know I will die, or like I know I will, return as a glittering sound. In August, I almost learned to play volleyball. At the end of August, my lover says, bless you, bless you. Oh, wow, bless you. One for each sneeze, which is impressive, as there is so little time between them. By the way, do the days of the week ever get jealous of the months? I think Tuesday gets jealous of September, just a hunch. In September, I am steadfast. I am devoted to the wall calendar, as well as the desk, the phone and computer, loopy, Gregorian, and gorgeous lunar. I worship all calendars, while despising the ever-quickening passage of time. In October, I reschedule a dentist appointment. In November, everything murmurs. In December, every soul's pulse is loud. By December 5th or so, I am ready for the new year, but not for January. I ask Daddy Time, why January? Why? I ask if he could give me more July if I gave him head. I ask if he would prefer being called Sir. At 3 p.m. on the 31st of December, it is not over. At midnight on the 31st, or is it now the 1st, I wonder what it would feel like to feel alive, to be living every single one of Sir Father Dad's seconds, and whether anyone on earth could stand it. Yeah, pronunciation. Oh my God. Yeah, basil's like basil, right? Okay. That's suspicious. Okay, last poem. Um, it's called Quintessence Crab Fried Rice. It's from like a series. Just don't really want to explain about quintessence. So really, you can just pretend the title is Crab Fried Rice, and it won't affect this at all. Crab fried rice. The world contains crab fried rice and is thus beautiful. Or crab fried rice is more beautiful than the world. Which is true? Which is truer? The world is terrible and people are beautiful. Or people are terrible and the world beautiful. I know this. Life is a joy and living's hard. In other words, being alive, isn't that the hardest joy? And love a kind of death that means you're living? Or is love the very aliveness that helps you to, one day, die? Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like this. Love, when it's love, is a world, a kinder here in which you wake after a nap that followed something of an argument, to the smell of rice cooking, no, cooked rice, reheating, and then you're at the table, watching scallions fall on all that crab, a huge helping, true heaping of both, delivered by the hands that know you terribly well. Let's talk, he says, he who knows you. Love crab and scallions, hate confrontations, these meetings with truth, your own innermost and the innerly together. But as your heart, or more crucially your belly knows, they have to happen. So why not over this radiant bowl of rice? Little feasts like what your parents made for you, plus the kind of conversation they rarely made with you. Love as food and words, both. And maybe there's still a beautiful chance for this both with them. They must sense it too, how being alive is the most serious thing, and living the funniest. But first, sit with him, eat and talk, remember to chew. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chen. That was, I mean, a lot of us were screaming on the inside when you were reading. It's just like there was so much laughter too. I love that, you know, we spoke about this earlier too, and so many people asked this question too. I didn't want to mention anything that we already discussed in our interview, but I guess I'd have to ask. We'd have to speak about humor in some way because both of you read today poems which were funny. Molly earlier mentioned silliness. You mentioned the word unhinged, and there was like so much laughter when you were reading. What do you like? What is the place of humor in poetry? Like, it's a generic question. It seems silly to ask in my head, but I guess people would benefit from hearing you speak of it. Would you start, Chen?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I sort of said this in the interview, but it's kind of become my first instinct. And in some ways, um, I have to be careful not to rely on it too much. Um, and so usually there has to be some other motivation to write the poem. I think actually often I start from a very uh, sad or frustrated or just confused place. And I start writing because I want to figure something out, or I want to deepen the question that I have. Um, and so I think when that is like the foundation of working on something, then the humor can come in as a way, that's another tool, it's another way to help explore whatever it is I'm trying to explore. Rather than like I'm not a joke writer, like rather than sitting down and being like, oh, what's a funny thought I can jot down. Um, so yeah, that's how I tend to approach it. It actually, yeah, it comes from like a very sad or like cranky place,
Yeah.
and then to kind of get somewhere
No, it
else.
comes through too in your poems. That comes through, like you said, that your poems usually start in a sad way. There's a lot of sentiment in the poems, in each poem that you read. And earlier too, you spoke as if you were giving a caveat almost that, don't you, as a poet yourself, you said that you don't want to rely too much on humor, meaning that you will run a risk. Would you speak like a bit more about like what risk would that be? Like if you were to because you don't want to come across as a joke writer, is that the risk?
No, it's more that like I think over relying on any device um can make the writing flat or like a self-parody. And it just feels like creatively I'm retreading the same
Right.
ground. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. That is somebody asked something similar, so I hope that it helps them too, and it helps me too. It makes sense that why would you want to do the same thing over and over? Um, Molly, what about you? You spoke about humor too. You like the silliness of things, and your humor is in fact a bit different. Like while Chen's is more satirical or like I don't know, taking digs, yours is like in a silly, absurdist zone. Will you speak about that a little bit?
Totally. I had the privilege of like hearing Chen answer while I kind of thought about bouncing my ideas. But one thing that Chen said that I really agree with is that I think, um, okay, let me backtrack. One thing I always say is that like I think having a command of language and a very good sense of like the textures of language and how it feels, you can do one thing. The first, I think, that shows you have this, ability. The first is you can write a good joke. You can like make someone laugh. And the second is you can write a poem, and I think there's something really linked between humor and poetry already. And that being said, I agree with Chen. I think if you lean too much into the humor part, it's a completely separate thing. However, in my poetry, I think that, I just read a few poems there, I think pretty sad. But they have like, I guess, elements of humor in them. I think I think that exists because it feels authentic to the way that I process um sadness. It's a way of just reflecting on maybe not the absurdity, but the surrealism of feeling this like crazy emotion and feeling so sorry for yourself while like other things in the world exist and there's always going to be something funny. I really believe in like most things in life and it feels authentic to me to like call those out in my poems. So that would be my answer, I think.
Right. That also makes so much sense. I mean, who has ever cried without snot, and isn't snot gross and funny? And so it's, I guess, similarly, we all live lives and we cope in ways, and humor is one of the, I don't know, foremost coping mechanism.
Yeah.
All right. People were very interested in like, so it's two questions, but I'm gonna ask in one go. Like, people, I see that a lot of poets who are starting out are like they struggle with editing. A lot of folks first, like, especially when they are very like at a beginner stage, they're like, oh, we don't edit, I don't edit. I, I do what I do, and this is what it is. So people were interested in knowing what your revision process is like. Like, do you revise? Do you not revise? How much is it? Is there a point in time when you're like, this is too much, I have to be stopped? Like, when do you decide that a poem is done? Chen, you wanna answer that first?
Sure. Yeah, it depends on the poem. There's some poems that I revise a ton. Um, like 20, between 20 to 30 drafts, or more. And there's some that still go through some edits, but it's more minimal, sort of more tinkering with some wording, sort of fewer structural changes. Um, but I would say like my process, it's funny because I'm quite an impatient person, actually, but I think patience is like really important for writing and for revision because I think often you just need some more time to kind of sit with everything and let the language be in your life and let it kind of work on you, right? And to be curious about it, to really think through like, oh, what effect is this having as I'm reading it over and over? I know some poets, and I do this sometimes, like pin poems to, I have like this corkboard situation in my office. So sometimes I'll like pin poems up, and other people, it's like just making it a part of your life where you're just like seeing it and like interacting with it off like the computer or whatever, device or notebook you write in. Um, but just to like walk past it, sit by it, just read like the ending of it again. Um, so I like doing like whatever like subtly shifts my relationship to the poem is really helpful. And just doing that kind of slowly, incrementally. Um, it's sort of like people talk about like this with interior design all the time. It's like, oh, like get paint swatches, right? Like don't just paint, your whole wall until you feel like, oh, this is like the color that you want, right? So you can approach revision in that way too, of like, let me just tinker with this line. And usually there's some kind of domino effect that happens with that. But you can go like very slow, do small changes and see where that leads.
I love that way of thinking about revision. You're right about the domino effect too, that you change something and then it suddenly everything changes. And yeah, thank you. Molly, what about yourself?
Yeah, I really, I think some things Chen said I agree with. So the first thing I would say is I think it very much depends on the poem. I have written some poems that I have moved a comma or have changed 3 or 4 words, and I'm genuinely so shocked that like one day I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, oh, and it all comes out, and I'm just like, what just happened? Like that does happen to me from time to time. But the thing and then I feel good with it, like for the most part. But the thing I will say about a poem that comes out like that is that I read it, I read it a few times over and I read it like later down the line. And I don't want to change it. And then I realize I have been thinking about this for years. Like I've been thinking about this for like 3 to 4 years. So of course, maybe that's why I didn't feel like things had to be changed, because I went into it being like, I know what I'm here to say. Which leads me to my next point, which is that it's funny to edit a poem because the question is, what are you working towards, right? It's not like you're doing a math problem where you want to check your work and you want to hone all these right angles and shave off every edge. It's very unclear what you're editing towards. And you could very easily be making things different without making them better. So I guess for me, the measure of like, is this poem getting better is like, is my heart racing more? Am I just like, so like, am I reading it and I'm just on this wave and I don't want to stop, and there's just this momentum and there's like movement going on. Because sometimes I'll read a poem that I read, sometimes, most of the time I'll read a poem I'm writing, just kind of whatever. And it feels like you're like, stop, start, stop. It doesn't, it's not like a dance. It's just kind of like, maybe like a crab walk or like shuffling. And like, that to me is like when I'm editing what I'm looking for. And that involves, in my opinion, a lot of like sound, like it's very like sound driven for me. I think most, if not all poems I write are like very substance driven. So like once that's out of the picture, like what you want to say, but then editing for sound, meaning like how are the words falling and like the syntax and like what does the landscape look like? Sometimes I think about sentences and syntax as like mountains. Like there's some sentences like I walk down the street, or like, or you could have a sentence that was like, maybe this is like a grammatically, I'm not going to have the right word for it, but you'll say something like, upset that she lost her dog, she went to the grocery store. Like and that looks like something like this, right? As opposed to like that. And like when I read a poem, I'm always thinking like, oh, are there a lot of like, if that's what I'm going for, are there a lot of like this? Does the momentum lead here? And then does it crash? Or does it just look like that? It's like what makes your heart race? So sorry, the question is, how do I edit? Yeah, I edit for like, am I just like love it? Like, do I feel like it's moving? Like to me, it's like very movement based. I hope that, yeah, I hope
No, I
that,
see that. I love that. I see your passion coming through very well. And when you were reading, when Chen was reading, I was like so impressed by the rhythm of the poems. Like every single poem you two read, like there was not like, I'm a very harsh editor as well. Like I'm like always looking for like an odd word or an odd sound, but I couldn't find any. I mean, everything was flowing so beautifully. So it's very clear to me that how much you rely on your gut and your ear to kind of see if the rhythm is right. And I love that. I wanted to ask two more questions. I hope we'll not go over time a lot, but a couple of minutes would be fine. One question is, interpret it as you will. Where do poems come from? I guess you can interpret this as a writer's block question. If somebody is like dealing with, I said I deal with blocks all the time. I sit at the table and I'm like, fuck, I can't do shit. I write a line, it's so shitty. I'm like, oh God, I should kill myself. I'm kidding. I'm very happy with where I am. But yeah, so what should people like, Chen, what do you think? How do you write? Like, how do you begin a poem?
I began. Um, I think I just try to be really open to a poem coming from anywhere. Um, so yeah, like today I was working on some comments on um an MFA student's thesis, and I'm like the second reader for it. And so it's kind of preparing. We're gonna have like a conversation about it this week. But as I was like commenting on the poems, there were um yeah, phrases like bits that I was like, oh, this could go into a poem too. So yeah, I think just staying really, really open to that possibility is what's important to me. Because I used to feel like, oh, a poem, like something has to be worthy to, go into a poem to be written about in that way.
That's what I
Um,
struggle with so much that, oh, this is not worthy of a poem. But I
Yeah.
really like the idea of being open. Like poetry is everywhere in the air, and if you're open, it will enter you if you allow it. I like that way of thinking about it. Thank you. Uh, Molly, like, how do you begin your poems? Do you think similarly?
So yeah, I definitely agree with being open. The question about writer's block is really interesting because I think that it's like very complicated. I think when I first started writing poems, I was like, I don't know what to write poems about. No, nothing is worthy enough to write in a poem. And that I think that's like part of it is just like the perception shift is that everything you have to say, everything you think of is worthy to you. And that's like all that you need, right? And so anything you notice that like makes your heart race or you're just like really stuck on it, pay attention to those things, like, and that just opens a whole world of things. I think the other thing about writer's block is like, don't beat yourself up. It's like sometimes a lot of things happen in your life and there's so much to chew on for like weeks or months. And sometimes there just isn't. And like that in and of itself is something like, or not. And it's like, I don't know. I go through some weeks where I don't write any poems or like I write a few poems and they're bad. And I'm just like, okay, like that just is what it is. And I think don't be discouraged if don't be discouraged by long bouts of writer's block, but keep writing because what I've found out, and a lot of people say this is like, I'll write like 4 poems within the span of like what a X amount of time, and they're all really weird in a not in a bad way. And like each of them have one line that's so good. I'm like, that's cool. But also what you do is you notice you're like, oh, I'm writing about these themes over and over. Like you're just creating a log of yourself, and that will like shoot up to the poem. So it's like no pressure. Just like I would never put pressure on like needing to write a poem or even a good one.
That eases a lot of anxiety. Chen, I'm sorry if I stopped you sooner than you meant to
oh no.
stop yourself, but you were saying that you also like the challenge of using something unpoetic.
Mm,
Uh, Anthony Anexagoro, whose workshop I once attended, also used to speak
mm.
about this quite often, that, it's too poeticized, it's too poetic. So there are things that, would you speak a bit about what you mentioned in the chat?
Yeah, I think I always want to be surprised in the process and like by what the writing itself shows me, what I could not have anticipated finding out or experiencing. Um, so again, that's yeah, just back to the openness piece of it too. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that you care so much about surprise, not just surprising the reader, but being surprised yourself as you figure out the poem. Um, okay, my one last question is the silliest question of all. My impulse of asking it is because I wanted to answer it, but I also would really love to know both of your answers. It is, somebody mentioned it, like, if you could be any poet other than yourself, who would you be? The answer for me would be Leonard Cohen, and it's a very clear answer for me, which I wanted to mention for some reason. But what would it be for you both? You can take a second to think if you. And you
Can I
can
ask,
also
can I
say,
ask
I
why?
hate.
Can I ask why Leonard Cohen is your answer?
Oh, that's gonna be another 2-hour call. But I love Leonard Cohen. I worship at his altar, really. He's just a magnificent, mystical, brilliant person. Yeah. Jen, do you have an answer? You can say all poets suck. I don't care about. I don't want
Um,
to be.
but like actually, yeah, a bunch of answers come to mind.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'll say, yeah, one of them is Anne Carson. Um,
I was hoping for that response.
yeah, I was returning to some of her work today because I'm gonna teach this prose poem of hers later this week. Um, yeah, I'm just amazed like by the range and the just continuous commitment to experiment. Um, if like you thought the last thing I did was weird, I'm gonna do a whole other
Yes.
thing now. Um, so yeah, she's definitely one of my answers. Yeah, that comes to mind.
Thank you. Thank you. I am always amazed by how many people are inspired by Anne Carson. It's like every other person I speak to, every other poet we interview, they are like everybody's mentioning Anne Carson. I'm like she's like the god lady of the world, of the lit world. Molly, did you come upon an answer?
So I think I can speak to some poets that have really inspired me and like have I've read their work and I've just been, and I think like for me, the measure is like, whoa, I didn't know poems could do that. Like I
Mhm.
didn't know that was going on. And it's, it's like the list of my most influential poets that I think I like sent to you, Karen, but the first is Matea Harvey, who she just writes the weirdest stuff, like was very, very inspired by just how out of the box she wrote. And she wrote very like between poetry and prose as well. Just I remember reading one of her poems for the first time and I was like, I didn't know you could do that.
Mm.
Lucille Clifton for how defiant and how measured her poems are. I remember reading a poem once that she'd written about her aunt. Oh my God, I can't remember the name. I just remember how it made me feel, but I was like, wow, she's just so defiant in a way that I really respected. And um, Naomi Shihab Nye for how imaginative and peaceful and heartwarming her poetry is and full of longing. And Chen, you're actually on this list, which is like partly why I'm like so shell star shocked. Chen, I love how I mentioned this to you, like silly and wacky and yeah, surprising your poems are. I think that is something that I love to read in poetry a lot. So yeah, those are some of my answers.
Thank you, Molly. It's always so delightful to hear people speak about their inspirations and people like the artists that they love because there's so much like exuberance in you when you speak about somebody you love, especially when you don't know them. Uh, but thank you so much, guys, for reading for us, and thank you everybody for coming in and staying. I know that's like I don't know, a Wednesday, like it's a weird day, and yeah, thank you for sitting through, and I sure that it was worth your while. Thank you again. I just, at the end of something like this, I just feel so full of gratitude that feel at a loss for words. So, and I suck at like saying things like be in touch with us or I don't know, keep up with what Only Poems does or come to the next reading. But you know, you all will figure that all of that stuff out. I have so much faith in yeah in just the audience that we have and yeah, just thank you, Chen, again for agreeing to this and Molly. It was so amazing. Thank you so much. Bye bye.